I am the great Cornelio. 3, 2, 1.
That was a
Oh,
delay.
yeah, let's do that again because
And
my
hold on.
clapping was not in rhythm. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
That was better. So second clap.
Yes.
Make note.
Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. This is episode 8. My name is Kyle, and as always, we have CJ. How are you, sir?
I'm good, but is this episode 8 or episode 9?
9.
You said episode 8.
I know.
So this is Kyle and CJ, and this is episode 9. Oh, it's too funny.
Yep.
And that just goes to show how our weeks are going.
Yeah.
That's
It's good. It's
Yeah.
good. It's
Episode
good. So
That's crazy. We have episode 9, and we have, for this book, there's what? I think there's like 3 or 4 more chapters.
yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah.
We
3 more
are, but what's
chapters.
weird is we're 66%, according to the Kindle, we are 66% done.
Well, chapter 10 is a ridiculously long chapter.
Yeah, and
It's like,
ironically, it's about nothing.
ironically, yes. That's funny. You made a good joke there.
I sure did. So, what have you been listening to this week? Anything new and spectacular?
I was listening to Victor Wooten. Been listening to the book, the Spirit of Music book. I listened to some Corey Wong,
Cool.
and I listened to some Rebirth brass band,
Nice.
and very much enjoy the music.
Good.
And then I did some YouTube searches, and I found Victor Wooten playing with Corey Wong.
Did you find the live stream that they did?
No, well, yeah, I saw it, but I didn't play it yet.
I haven't watched it either.
I was gonna check that out. This was just one song, and then yeah, that was it. I think
Cool.
that was it. I just didn't realize they were on tour
Mm-hmm.
February and March of or February through March of this year, like this
Yep.
past year. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty cool.
Yep.
That's awesome. How about yourself?
Still Corey Wong and Rebirth Brass Band. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Very cool. They're
I've
strong. They're good.
Yeah.
And with the weather changing, they kind of fit that
They do. They do.
that atmosphere of good, upbeat
Mm-hmm.
music.
Yeah, and the awkward thing about recording on Wednesday nights is, Tuesday our podcast comes out, so I listen to it while I drive just to make sure everything was right.
Right.
And then Wednesday, the one podcast that I still listen to comes out. So it's like Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't listen to music in the car. So it's like, and we recorded on Saturday, so it's not like I had a lot of time in the car to listen. So, you know,
Yeah. That's funny actually. But like I said, I've been listening to the audiobook a lot, so I haven't even listened to that much music myself.
gotcha.
I've been more focused on just getting that book in my head because
Mhm.
I got to go through it again,
Right.
which I don't want to do because it makes me tearful.
Yeah. Yep. So we have measure 9 tonight, which is the chapter phrasing, which is probably my least favorite chapter in the book, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the topic is difficult. The stuff that they talk about hits me hard, and I don't like revisiting it.
Okay, so your least favorite, not because of the context, but because of what the context does in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, I get that.
Yeah.
It is a very I'm sure for most, but I would say a lot of people it's probably a very hard-hitting chapter if you're reading this book.
Yep.
Depending upon how and why you're reading the book.
Right. Right. So the catchphrase is anything including physical actions can be phrased. And I've talked about this a lot, maybe not a lot, but I've at least mentioned it in the podcast that phrasing is one of my favorite elements because you can phrase so many different things when it comes to music.
Right.
It's not just about breathing, but you can phrase dynamics, you can phrase rhythm, and you can phrase all these different things. Um, so it's one of my favorite elements to play with sometimes.
But one of the hardest chapters to read through the book.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You are a complex male human being.
I'm something all right.
Maybe not human.
So shall we get into the book?
I don't know. Are you sure we could do this? Are you sure we could do
No,
this?
no, I'm not.
So the chapter continues after Victor, Michael, and Clyde leave the accident and the healing of the person that was in the accident from the chapter before. And they arrive at Victor's house, and lo and behold, Uncle Clyde is already there sitting in Michael's chair.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in this book, Victor's just doesn't phase him anymore. Like it's like,
Yep.
yeah, I don't expect him to be anywhere else but in the chair if I'm not, yeah. So that's where it starts, and he kind of like um he sees Clyde, Uncle Clyde, and then he notices that he's speaking a little more clearly
Mm-hmm.
than in dialect. And I think that's an important thing to note because of the fact that his intentions when he's speaking are different when he speaks in a different form or
Mm-hmm.
dialect or whatever we want to say.
And what's interesting is it relates to the last chapter because he changes his tone
Right.
essentially.
Exactly. Right. So I don't know where you like
Uh,
start.
Page 180 is where I first have something.
Okay, so go ahead because that's where I kind of have first something.
Um, Let me figure out.
So good. The Kindle's so
the
good.
The
That's
problem with the Kindle is because I highlight so much in it that when you go to try to turn the page, it sometimes picks up the highlight like you want to edit the highlight.
right.
So, I don't know where they're. So I'm just going to start reading. So Michael says, actions as well as words are vibrations, and how we put them together can produce different vibrations, sort of like notes. An individual note sounds one way and produces a certain vibration. A group of notes put together produces different vibrations. A group of chords will produce altogether different vibrations. For example, a group of. Oh, sorry. Went to turn the page, it didn't work.
Mm.
Oh, no, not again. Come on. Hang on. I can't turn the
I'm
page.
I'm gonna let this be a dramatic pause because I know exactly where you are in the book and I could read.
For example, vibrations can produce a scale. It can be a major, minor, diminished, or any type of scale. These scales produce different sounds and feelings. A longer group of notes, scales, chords, or words strung together is called a phrase. Now, a phrase put together in a particular way can cause miraculous things to happen.
That is something I did highlight, but I did highlight something a little before that,
Okay, go for it.
which leads into it. Um, but I don't know if we really need to read it.
Okay.
I think the only thing that I would out of everything that I underlined, I would say this. Uncle Clyde said, so understand this: certain vibrations and situations can be created by the words and phrases we use. That's why we choose them carefully.
Right.
And I think that kind of like because of what all you just read, like kind of leads into that. But it's true. Vibrations are a big thing
Mm-hmm.
in anything
Yep.
because we all vibrate, we all resonate at a certain speed, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just the same thing for anything else in the world. Everything has a vibration to
Yep.
it. It's just not everybody is susceptible to feeling that vibration.
Mm-hmm.
That the word? Yeah. Not everybody feels it. Not everybody senses it. Some people are more sensitive to it than others.
Maybe the word is receptive.
Receptive, I think it's better. Yeah, totally. They're not as receptive to it, right? Because they may feel something but not be aware of what that vibration, what that is.
Right.
whereas other people are aware that the vibration that is causing their change in mood or whatever, their understanding of it, they know where it is. And
Mm-hmm.
whether you want to call that person an empath or whatever, there's things that go to it.
Yep.
Which is funny because in the next chapter, in the next paragraph, he goes, the common person relates phrases to words only,
Mm-hmm.
which is true. And then he says, we as musicians go a little further, and this is Uncle Clyde speaking, and add notes into the phrase category. So I think in one episode I talked about how breathing, I was told to breathe for the sentence you're going to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all the breath that you need. You don't need more than that. So whatever breath you would take to say the sentence
Mm-hmm.
is all the breath you should need to sing, because if you control your breath properly, you will have enough breath to sing that line. I think that's interesting because that also changes that.
Unless you're singing Bach, in which case you might not have enough.
Right. Yeah. No, I know.
Because
I'm
there's
not saying it goes for
300
everything.
notes
That's
for one syllable, and
but it's pretty accurate
yeah,
when it comes to a lot of what you're saying. But I agree with you, and that changes your phrasing,
yeah, it does.
and that's as a singer.
Mm-hmm.
As an instrumentalist, it's even different, more
Yeah,
different.
yep, more
And
differenter.
every instrument, what
I said more differenter.
more differenter. We're just
Mm-hmm.
gonna make up words and put them out into the Urban Dictionary and see if people grab them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you have a woodwind instrument versus a brass instrument versus a percussive instrument versus a string instrument,
Mm-hmm.
which could also be percussive, and all that stuff. And I think that no matter how you phrase the instrument that you're using, can change that phrase.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's just my take.
Yeah. So the one line that sticks out to me is, now a phrase put together in a particular way can cause miraculous things to happen. Like what miraculous things?
Are you asking that as a rhetorical question, or are you really curious?
I'm curious just to know if you have an answer.
Do you have an answer?
I might. I don't know that I could formulate it into words, but I kind of have an answer.
I think that it boils down to, I look at it this way. How you say a word can mean completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
And how you say it, meaning like I can say to a dog, come here,
Mm-hmm.
quietly, and the dog may come. I can yell at the dog and be like, come here, and the dog may not come.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's a different tone, but there's also a different phrase to those two
Mm-hmm.
words.
Yep.
And that receptiveness to that phrase plays a factor. When you're talking to a kid and you're telling the kid, come here, and you're doing it in an angry tone, the kid's not going to want to come over there. But if you quietly turn around to the kid and be like, come here, I got to talk to you for a second, the kid's going to walk over because they're not going to feel intimidated or something to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with anybody at any age, really. So I guess in a sense, they say that if you phrase things properly, you'll get the response you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take. Is that your take?
I think that's one of my takes. I think the other take is that, a phrase, musically, a phrase that is performed can generate a certain response.
Right.
I mean, you're going back to that Harry Connick Jr. Video that you found, where the audience starts clapping. Like, he played a phrase that made them start clapping. He didn't say, all right, everyone, let's clap on 1 and 3, Everyone just did it because of what he was playing. The phrase that led up to it, he essentially told them, I mean, they got it wrong, but,
And then he adjusted that phrase and got them to clap on the
right.
on the beat that he wanted to.
Right.
And
there's... Go ahead.
No, go. You're good.
I would say there's so much, like, one of the reasons I love Robert Randolph and the Family Band, and, like, the Lee Boys also. They're another great slide guitar group. Sorry, I hit a button. I thought like cancel the recording. I didn't. It's good. We're good. Um, so the Lee Boys, I mean, you can and Robert Randolph, you can hear them as they're playing, like these phrases like bubble up from one of the players, and you can actually hear them like say that phrase to the other person and influence what they play, how they play, you know. And if you go back to one of my YouTube videos where I analyzed music as a language with two songs by Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, Big Country and Stomping Grounds, listening to Bela and Victor, like their phrases together, and Jeff Coffin too, and how they influence. Like there's this one section where Victor and Jeff are playing a solo, and the way Victor phrases influences how Jeff responds.
Right.
You know, so musically we have this communication, and you think about, you know, first off they're having a conversation using musical phrases, but like the emotion that can be generated by those phrases. Like if you change the phrasing of that, you can change the emotion that's associated with it and what the audience feels,
Oh
which
yeah,
I think
and you
is
can
really
change
cool.
the direction of the song.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
totally change the direction and totally change the feeling of the song. You could
Mm-hmm.
start off with this happy, jumpy song and end up with this like angry song that
Right.
everybody's like, "Oh, I don't, no, that's not right. Doesn't feel
Yeah.
good." Totally. And we again, it's also receptiveness of the person that's listening.
Right.
Some people just don't react to music the way others do. And some
Mm-hmm.
people react to it and don't know why they're reacting to it the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember one of the conversations growing up because my grandfather being an opera singer, music being a part of our lives in that capacity, of them talking about songs that would make them cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like and not even like something that they're sitting there going to want to cry. It's just the way the song triggers whatever
Mm-hmm.
inside of their brain or their emotion, whatever, just they just start crying. And there's
Yep.
songs that are out there that every time I listen to them just make me
Mm-hmm.
tear up,
Yep.
you know? And not everybody responds to music that way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, a lot of people do respond to music that way and they don't know why.
Yep.
And it's interesting because is that the phrasing? Is it it's all the elements
Mm-hmm.
put together
Yep.
for phrasing
Mm-hmm.
purposes. So you could have a song that could bring millions of people together just because of the way it's phrased.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what that kind of leads to, that miraculous
Yeah.
possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't even have to pick out different things throughout this chapter to talk about because it's pretty much that conversation. It's
Mm-hmm.
just this whole idea of I mean, he even says further down, he goes, you see, in all the elements of music can be phrased, not just notes. How to use these different elements is what you've been learning.
Mm-hmm.
He's individually learning how to break down the elements and how to use them, and then he's learning now how to phrase them.
Right.
And then you think about the order of what you learn throughout the book. The next thing that he learns is space and rest. That's the
Mm-hmm.
next chapter.
Yep.
So you're going to learn all about this phrasing. You're going to learn how to connect everything, how to make everything work. And now we're going to teach you that you need to put space everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just as powerful. So it's one of those chapters that makes you go, what is going on in my life?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he breaks down life and he breaks down the days alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was that's an intense paragraph for two.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, I've heard this done by so many different people in so many different ways, you know, and you know, this is where it starts to get difficult for me,
Right.
you know, and I think and maybe you too, because I mean, we both kind of said it before we got on, we're like we're not doing what we want to be doing, you know, in a career, you know.
Right.
At least I'm not, for
I just
sure.
told you I want to retire.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
like I'm ready to retire. Listen, I enjoy helping people. I will not say that
Mm-hmm.
that's not the case. I'm not saying that to give a cliche answer.
Right.
I really do enjoy helping people. Even people that make me upset, I will help them
Yeah.
because I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm not going to tell you
Right.
no. I'm going to make sure that you have what you need. And if you're going to be just as upset with me as you were before and as you are after, fine. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean I'm still going to help you.
Right.
I mean, we both experienced that. We've worked in fields where that has happened, and even off the bat, the person's just an angry person.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you did and what you say and how you help them, they still become this angry person towards you.
Yep.
And they're not receptive to anything. But
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. It's one of those things where we know we're making a living, we know we're making money, we know we're able to survive, but at the same time, it's not what we want to be doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, and then you question, like, what choices did I make that put me
Right.
in this position?
And then you watch a show like House Hunters, and they're looking at these houses. Like, oh, my budget's $5 million. It's like, oh, well, what do you do for a living? I pet caterpillars all day. Like,
Oh.
what?
Yeah,
Like,
it's like,
how do you get paid for petting caterpillars?
yeah, and why am I not getting paid that money?
Right.
So I don't know if we want to read through this, but it basically breaks down, you know, if you're 50 years old, it tells you how many days you've lived, and how many days you lived until you're 70. And there's this whole breakdown of, so this is how many days you have, and then what a total of this days that you were sleeping, and this, it just breaks down how many actual days you've lived,
Right.
meaning like actually lived, not in the sense of I was asleep, I was sick, I was an
Right.
infant, I was it's
Mm-hmm.
the days that you were at a point in your life where you were able to make conscious efforts and decisions of
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to go.
Right.
I don't
Right.
think we need to read through all that math.
No, but I think one of the most important parts is towards the end of it, where he says, or where Uncle Clyde says, "Now listen here, son. How much of your precious little time is spent on really becoming who you choose to be? Do you know? Actually, all of it is, but you don't know that it's you doing the choosing. How much of that time is spent consciously making yourself better? Not much. We can probably count that time in weeks or even days. And that's one of the hard ones for me, is reading that line, and I've read it, I don't know, 20 something times at this point. That's a hard one to swallow.
That is, it is a hard one to swallow. It's one of those things where it's kind of like, really? Am I wasting days? Am I wasting time? Am I
Mm-hmm.
wasting this and wasting that?
Right.
Like, should I be sleeping anymore? Like,
Right,
like
right. It reminds
it's
me of that Seinfeld episode where Kramer decides to do the Da Vinci thing and sleep only 20, was it 20 minutes every 3 hours? So he gets like 4 more hours to the day, and then he ends up, falling asleep and
right,
wrecking
right.
everything. But yeah, anyway.
But it's true. People do that. They try. They try. Wait.
Yep.
I know people that can take a 20-minute nap and be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like and they can do it. Like they can literally, like, I'll be talking to them and they can be like 20 minutes later they're back up.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
makes me think of this one time I was in high school, and the band director, he was a big gentleman, he was a nice guy, but intimidating, but in a good way, like all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. He's a big guy, he smoked, he did everything, smoked cigars, all that stuff. And he's conducting. At some point he conducts with his right hand and he grabs his chest with his left. And he stops. The band still plays. That's hysterical. You need to leave that in. At one point, his right hand's up because he's conducting. His left hand grabs his chest right over his heart, and he stops. And I wasn't the only one who saw this. And he stopped for a few measures. We were still playing. We were still all on time, and he came right back in on beat. Like, I don't know how he did it. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what happened. I don't know where he went. He could have had a minor stroke for all we knew, and he was just spot on coming back in on that downbeat,
Mm-hmm.
like 3 or 4 measures later. And I remember looking at I'm a saxophonist, so I remember looking at the person next to me who I knew well, and we were just like, "Did you see that?" Yeah. So okay, just make sure, like, make sure we were doing. And it blows your mind because, like, what happened at that moment?
Right.
Like, I know, like, sometimes when musicians play, they get into that zone, or what they say, that pocket, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that he talks about that. What happens? Like, where are you? Where did you
Right.
go? I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know. And that's what this, like, kind of makes me think. It's like, so everything we're doing is gonna be making ourselves better, but I feel like, do they talk about mistakes and failure in this one? No, they don't.
A little bit.
It's more so in the second book.
Yeah.
I feel like this book was like, this is what's on my mind, and the second book is like,
Mm-hmm.
I just learned so much more new stuff and I need to share it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I did.
that's kind of what he said to me when I met him. When I first found out that he was writing the second book, and he kind of said, like it's just the first book, but like deeper. Like the
But
ideas are more
it's well
expanded.
done though. You don't
Yeah.
feel like you're reading the first book though.
No, no, no.
No. They do say further down. I don't know if you have more to read into that. I did underline it. Ironically, it is italicized in the book.
Hmm.
All things that you're. I'm going to read this. This is read in Uncle Clyde's tone. All the things that you've held your mind to, you have accomplished or will accomplish. You can believe that, and all these time frames can be viewed as phrases.
Hmm.
So I was thinking about that, and it's like, so the 3 years that I went to my master's considered a phrase.
Yeah.
The 4 years that we were in college, it was a phrase.
Hmm.
So every like, and it's funny because I work in education, you essentially work at a university, so you're almost in that realm. I
Hmm.
still think of the year as the school year. Like it's hard for me to think of the calendar year from January to December.
Hmm.
I constantly think, okay, the year is September to June, and then I have summers.
Right.
And not that I have summers off. I'm just saying, like mentally, I'm just so used to
Hmm.
that
Yep.
that it's hard to turn that off.
And what's hard is like when I got here, because I started working for a school when I got here. Um, I was so used to September to June, but like they were August to May. It was like that, just that little change was like, whoa,
Yep. Yep.
you know. And
And
this is like where they start to get me back, like because the page before is like, oh, this is really kind of grim, and then
and Victor
Michael,
acknowledges that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and then Michael says, there's only one reason you ever fail at anything, and that's because you eventually change your mind. That's it. Like I told you, anything you and everything you have ever decided to do, you have succeeded or will succeed at doing. It may take a day, a year, or 12 lifetimes, but if you hold your mind affixed on the idea, it will come forth. It has to. That is the law. So that, hearing that, it's like, oh, well, they're getting me back, but then they depress me even more later on. It's like, oh, this is great.
I think it, but I think it leads up to a reason as to why they put this back and forth at him.
Right.
And but you don't know that until it comes to that
Mm-hmm.
conclusion, and you go back and forth. Um, and then it goes further. They're talking more about that and failure and all that stuff. And Victor like took he does talk about how he didn't understand it at first, but when he started really thinking about it, he was like, okay, this all makes sense. I get what he's
Mm-hmm.
saying. And it's true. I was thinking about it too. The things that I failed at were the things I just didn't really care about.
Right.
Or not that I didn't care about them. It's just that they didn't fit in
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted to do.
Right.
I just wish I was better at the things that I like doing.
Right.
Um at the bottom of the page, of 184, after Victor explains his understanding, he said, Uncle Clyde interrupted my thoughts. So what I was saying before Michael chimed in is this. Your life, which is capitalized, the word, is made up of a string of many different phrases. Most of these phrases were put together unconsciously.
And I think that's what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
That our life is just a series of phrases. You can look at, like your college years as a phrase, or,
Right.
a relationship as a phrase, or,
Which is true. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
date somebody for 3 years, that's 3 years of your life, but that's a phrase.
Yep.
Or a phase, because at some point they do say word phase,
Mm-hmm.
and they said it's kind of the same thing.
Yep.
And then he talks about, he goes back about the days on your planet and make sure, are you making the right choices? And Victor says, I never realized that our time was so short. And Clyde goes, most people don't until it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just like, oh man.
Yep. And then this is where they start bringing you back down again, because
Right.
then Michael says, call it life or call it music. There's no difference except most people's musical lifespan is much shorter. Well, thanks,
Yeah,
but it's true.
I get what he's saying, and even on that end of it, because it just, and that's we could read these things like crazy, but
Hmm.
all this stuff, and then I don't have anything for a while because he talks
Well, he
about
does. So he does kind of bring it back a little bit for me, where he says, "And only when the separate." So it's cult life, cult music. There is no difference except that most people's music lifespan is much shorter, and only when the separation disappears for you, meaning the separation between life and music,
right,
music will become part of who you are.
right, right. And then there's the paragraph after I did mark. It
Hmm.
says you can see how setting up certain phrases in your life can produce desired results days, years, or decades later. Musical phrases can be set up in the same way. If you are playing a show, what you choose to play at the start of the night can determine how the listener will hear you later in the show. You can use certain musical phrases to set up his ear or his emotions for something you choose to play or do later. And I think Victor Wooten does a very good job at that in his albums.
Yeah.
Because I feel like his albums, you're like, you listen to, oh, this is great, this is cool. And then like the second song comes in, oh, this is really cool. And then the third one comes in, or the fourth one, and it kind of mellows out in a
Hmm.
good way.
Hmm.
And like you hear these and you're like, oh, this is really good. And you're like, okay, cool, cool. And then like the next song is a little more, I don't want to say aggressive, but a little bit more upbeat. And then the
Yep.
sixth song or whatever, it's back to that like funky playing.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
it's every album I feel like has that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think some of it comes from Bella Fleck because well, the first time I saw Bella Fleck at the Tillis Center, um, I remember Bela saying, our goal is to take you on a journey, and it might be outer space, it might be just across the country, but we're going to take you to a different place. And my goodness, they took you on a journey that night. It was, I mean, they were just all over the place, and it was out there at points, and in some points it was difficult to sit through because it was just so frenetic and just out there jazz, and then all of a sudden it came back together, and there it was.
But he set up your phrasing right at the beginning by saying, we're going to
Exactly.
take you on a
Yep.
journey. And he wasn't
Exactly.
even playing music.
I know. Yep.
That's amazing.
Well, because he doesn't have that separation between life and music.
Right.
He's on
Or
that
he
different
does, and he knew
wavelength.
exactly what he was doing.
Right.
That's
So.
crazy. Um, and then they start playing.
Hmm. Well,
Uncle
Clyde starts playing.
Uncle Clyde starts playing the harmonica, and then Victor wants to join him, but he just listens. Then he joins in, but at first he doesn't think Clyde is a great player.
Hmm.
Then when he jumps in, he realizes he is.
Hmm.
Uncle Clyde does all this stuff, and he starts playing in the pocket, as he calls it.
Hmm.
And then Victor's like, "Oh my goodness, he's amazing!" And he was kept playing, and then Uncle Clyde started doing all this crazy stuff, and then they stop playing, and he acknowledges the fact that he was an amazing musician, but you would have never thought that when you met this person under the bridge because he
Hmm.
was a homeless man, quote unquote.
Right.
Didn't understand why he wasn't playing to make music or whatever, and asked him that, like, why aren't you doing these things? And Uncle Clyde's like, what did you do? He goes, what do you mean? You just heard me play. What did I do? And he was like, you played amazingly, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, but what did, what did I really do?
Hmm.
And Victor's like, well, he's like, you set me up. And then he talks, you set me up. Yeah, you set me up. That's what you did. And you did it in a way that I didn't even realize it was happening. First, you started with simple phrases, simple repetitive phrases. You made sure these phrases were familiar sound, singable, playable, right? Then you changed them. And he goes, first, I didn't think you were a very good player. Um, and then your phrases changed in length and it looked like you weren't even breathing. And then he's like, then you took it to the highest level possible. And then Cloud's like, you think that was the highest level? He's like, I could take you out of the galaxy.
Hmm.
And then he goes, what you didn't notice was that I also phrased the tempo, which is what you were talking about,
Hmm.
phrasing elements. I don't know if that's something that you had underlined or
Yep.
highlighted.
Absolutely.
So I'll stop talking. You can enjoy that and talk that.
One of the things that I always focus on, especially my choral groups, um, is phrasing of dynamics, because you can phrase the dynamics as a phrase,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of what we do when we sing, and I guess play to a certain degree as well, but more because the way we talk, if you think about the way we talk, we generally start soft. There's a peak of our phrase, and then we kind of trail off at the end. So most of your vocal phrases are the same way. But um, I always focus on the overall piece too, because one of the things that you learn with good choirs is that they're never singing at 100% in terms of volume.
Right.
There's always a place to go. They're always usually like 75, 80%. Um, but you don't know what your 75 to 80% is until you know where your loudest peak is in your piece. So and then you have to think about like the different like genres of classical music, whether it be Baroque or classical, or because
He put in quotes genre for the people that are not watching this on a video.
yeah. Because like if you think about Baroque music, the instruments back then didn't allow you to play as loud as the more modern instruments.
Right.
So it's like to be, because the way it was written, it was not written to sing boo. There's
Right.
a different style. Um, so then you have the phrasing of that too. So each one is different. But my whole thing was you need to have kind of that roadmap, and we talked a little bit about it last week. I think no, it was a week before with Sam and Rhythm.
Right.
When I was talking with my kids when they're learning how to sight read, and like that's one of the things that we focus on. It's like the first thing you do is you look at what the shortest note value is, so you can subdivide in your head. The second thing is then you look at the key signature, then you look at the time signature, and then you look at the overall piece. You look for things like accidentals, but you look for like the shapes, look for the dynamic shapes, the phrasing, that sort of thing. Um, that's how I approach, you know, looking at a piece for the first time. And I have a lot of friends who are, studio musicians. I have a friend who played on like the Star Wars movies, the
Oh, really?
Phantom Menace, and all those the first the like chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars. He played on all those. He played on the Lord of the Rings soundtrack as an upright bass player. And that's one of the things he always. His father was the one that taught me how to do all of that. He said it's so important when you go into settings like that. Like that's what you need to do because you've got one or two chances to get it right. Otherwise, you're not hired again. That's it. You're
Right.
done. You know. So, being able to look at that, and that's what I was trying to stress on my kids. Like that's what it's about. It's not about. He's like there are times where I was playing wrong notes, but because I was musical about it, they didn't care. You know, if I was strict and rigid about it and played every note but didn't play it musically, I would never get hired again.
Right. And I think that's an important thing is that we're so hung up on playing things perfectly
Mm-hmm.
that we lose the musicality
Yep.
of whatever we're playing.
Right.
And and it's funny because even for a singer, you could hit a wrong note, but if you do it right, and I know that sounds right, hitting a wrong note right in the right way,
Mm-hmm.
no one's going to know the difference.
Yep.
You will, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The person playing next to you, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the hardest thing to get past is like you're going to make that mistake. It's going to happen,
Yep. And
you know?
sometimes it's a mistake that you can't control.
Right.
I remember there was one service I played where it was a first communion. There were a couple hundred people in the congregation. It was families of all these kids, and the organ started to cipher in the middle of a hymn. And what a cipher is, for those that don't know, it's there's a piece of leather that covers the note when it's not being played. A cipher is when the leather gets like sucked into the pipe because the airflow is wrong, and it kind of gets stuck, so air kind of leaks through it. Sometimes you get a full note. Sometimes it's kind of a really flat version of the note because there's not enough air going through.
Right.
So what I had was this note go in the middle of a hymn, and I was like, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" Because like the way you fix it is sometimes if you bang on the note enough, it like fixes itself. But you have to like go into the organ and like pull the little piece of leather out. Well, I
Right.
was in the middle of a hymn, and I was like, "Well, how do I make this work?" So at the end of a verse, I just started improvising around this like note, and I made it musical, and I was able to like kind of caress the note and play the notes around it, so it changed the air pressure around it, and eventually it fixed itself. But so I fixed the organ and made it musical at the same time, and I think that's kind of the way phrasing works.
Well,
I
but you also like you listened more than anything.
Yeah.
You try not to think about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you thought about it too much, you probably wouldn't have succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take that word out of the equation for a second. Let's take succeeded out. You played
Yep.
musically,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
you
what's
used that to fix.
Yep. And what's funny is after that, I use that like in improvising. It's like, how long can I hold a note before someone realizes I'm holding a note?
Right,
You know,
right.
it was kind of a fun exercise, and I put it in
That's
different
funny.
voices, and sometimes I put it in the pedal, and that's an easy one. You just throw it in the pedal because it just vibrates the whole room. No one really cares. But if
Right.
you stick it as the top note and try and play around it, like that's hard to do and make it sound
Oh
good.
yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, sorry, I'm gonna stop nerding out about
No,
notes.
no, no. But that's what I mean. But that's what it's about, though. Like that's what this whole thing is about.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea of not letting what's happening at that moment freak you out
Mm-hmm.
and playing around. So whether it's life or music or whatever you're doing at that moment, I mean, I deal with anxiety. It at that moment when you're healing, when you're dealing with that anxiety, that's the only thing you can think of. And then it becomes like the worst thing in the world. And then on top of it, it starts bringing everything else around you, making everything else worse,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing could be bad.
Yep.
Like you could have $100 in front of you, but for some reason that $100 where you could use it to go buy something, you're like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
god, there's $100 in me. I don't know. You're like, it just becomes a bad thing,
Yep.
and you're trying to manipulate that time to be better,
Yep.
and that's hard to do
Mm-hmm.
because you overthink and you do this. But if you were to approach it the way you did in a musical way,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you could process that moment easier. I'm not like
Right.
I'm not trying to simplify anxiety in any way, shape, or
Mm-hmm.
form. I'm just saying that that is something you have to improvise around in your day.
Yep.
Sometimes you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it gets you to the point where you just can't and you have
Yep.
to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But that's creating space.
Yep.
So it's like we can relate everything to this.
Yep.
Oh man. And we were talking about, so Clyde talks about what he did to get Victor to do all these things. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if we want to read through that whole entire
No,
paragraph.
I think the important thing is when he says the proper use of phrases allows me to gradually change your mind and body. Changing it all at once can cause your head to explode just like glass. All I do is set up groups of vibrations to produce the same or similar effects. But instead of one powerful vibration, I can use a group of vibrations. It can be done in the course of a solo, or it can be done over the course of a whole night. It can be done over the course of a few days if you want to. You can set up your listeners to hear or listen to a particular way on a night or later. And I think, you know, going through it, if you're listening to us on Sunday evenings, I think that if you listen to Victor's whole catalog, the way we're playing it from start to finish, like I think he's phrasing his albums kind of like that. There's he starts out really flashy to get your attention with Show of Hands, and then he's got these kind of like fun funk folk
Right,
songs,
right,
and then he goes into like jazz,
right,
and then like to kind of smooth it out a little bit, and then it's Live in America, and then he kind of goes off on a tangent in Soul Circus, and then he kind of brings it back to his roots in palm mystery, and then he gets really philosophical in Words and Tones, and then he comes out with Tripnotics, which is just straight up jazz fusion. There's just all of these different things that's creating this whole. I consider each album a phrase, so
of course,
he's creating his whole world based on these individual phrases or albums,
right.
which is interesting to think about.
But I think he's that conscious about it
Hmm.
in an unconscious way, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know that he sat down when he was doing a Show of Hands and having
Right.
all the albums planned out in his head, but I think each
Oh,
of them has influenced the next one,
exactly.
and he leaves it off in a way where he knows where he's going next.
Right. Exactly. Where did you read all that? What page was that on?
That was 189.
Right. That was down towards. Okay, I see where that is. Okay. That was all the yes, that came after the this ain't nothing but vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay, cool. I just make sure I'm with you because I missed it while you were reading because I was paying attention to you reading. um and then so this is what I think is interesting. Clyde turns around to Victor and says, "You're at a special time in your life. You might say that you're ending one phrase and starting another," which we were just talking about with his albums. What
Yep.
direction you play this phrase in is completely up to you, and don't ever think that it's not. This is important. It's time for you to take control of your life with a capital L, and for you to accept that it is you who's in control. You understand? That hits because sometimes you don't feel like you're in control of anything that you're doing, but really you are. You know. Um, and then he talks about how musicians play a bunch of notes. That's okay. Um,
But I think there's important stuff in there because at least for me, that I focus on the notes of life too much. And I focus on the tiny little things instead of the bigger picture. It's
oh,
like,
me too. Yeah.
and I think it's interesting to think about, because this is kind of where it gets dark but kind of hopeful at some points. It's like I think about all the times that I've like scrutinized over like a $20 purchase, and it's like, why? It's $20 in the grand scheme of things. It's not worth
His
scrutinizing, but it's like in my head, it's like this is gonna change everything if I save this $20. It's like, but why? It's not. Stop!
It's
Like
not right,
you're,
and
you're an
it's hard
idiot.
to do. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I don't make big purchases until I sit on it for 3 months.
Right.
Yet someone else would go and make the purchase and then figure it out, and you which you could financially do.
Mm-hmm.
I and sometimes you question like I typically don't make big purchases right away. I need a new monitor. And like this, this is funny because I'm talking about a monitor, but I need a new monitor, and I'm like, I found one on sale, and the only reason why I did it was because it was on sale, and it was a deep discount. I'm like, you know what, it's worth it. So now I got to pay that.
Mm-hmm.
Not like it stinks, but it's working out. I wouldn't be able to do some of the stuff that I'm doing without having this monitor in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally get that because like I want to buy, and I don't buy things for myself typically. I don't go out and just do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be more apt to buy something for somebody else.
Right.
Right. And so I totally get that because you
Yeah.
sit on it. But that's a big part of me too. I see little things, but sometimes what problem is I see the buildup of little things.
Mm-hmm.
My expectation is that something bad's going to end up happening because that's what I dealt with a lot in my
Right.
life is that little things started happening and then that was like an explosion of a bad. And I need to start to take those moments and see the little good moments.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, what did you spend the $20 on? You
Right.
know,
Mm-hmm.
like I spent $20 on, a I don't know, let's just pick something out on a book,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why did I spend $20 on? I can't. But the book, I read the book, and it's like, okay, this was the best $20 I ever spent.
Right.
Like I misplaced the second book, the Spirit of Music. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
find it. I know I had it when I saw you back in April, and I knew it was in that bag for a long time because I purposely kept it there. Could not find it. So I was like, you know what? It's $17 book.
Mm-hmm.
I want it. I need it.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent the money, and now that I finished it on the audio version, I was like, okay, yeah, it was totally worth the $17
Yeah.
that I spent 3 times already.
Well, it's
you know,
funny because like I was making those chairs a couple weeks ago, and it was my biggest holdup was the chairs cost me $30 in materials, but the cushions cost me $70 a piece. I'm like, I can't spend that. Like that. It wouldn't compute in my head. But like in the grand scheme of things, $70 for a cushion isn't that big of a deal.
grand scheme of
But
things, have you sat outside and read on those
oh yeah,
chairs?
yeah, all the time.
Take the monetary side of it out of
Exactly
that for a
right.
second, and now you're outside sitting down reading.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like that right there, it takes us a moment to realize that. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I have the plant. You can't see it, on the way the screen is, but behind me, I have a plant. It's given to me by two really, really great friends, and it's a money tree. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And I'm not good with plants. I water this thing every week like I'm supposed to, and it's growing, and it can get to 4 feet tall, from what I understand. Like I'm at a point where I may have to transplant this into a bigger pot again. And it's funny because it's a plant. This one plant triggered my need of wanting more plants. There you go. See? For those who are watching this on YouTube, you can see the plant. If you ever watch us live, you'll see the plant. But
I'm Two Face.
and what?
I'm Two Face.
You are Two Face. Actually, that'd be really funny if we can get like.
Other way.
We're playing around with the camera. Sorry, guys,
Sorry.
for those who are listening. um,
You know what I learned this week?
What?
It took a video game for me to learn this. I have extreme ADD.
Really?
Yeah. It took
Maybe.
Zelda like the other day I was like, I'm gonna get to Kakariko Village. It should take me about 20 minutes. 4 hours later I still wasn't there. I was like, there's just too much to do. I was like, there's a Korok over here, I found a temple over there, I found this thing in the sky, I found a chasm under the ground, and I still didn't get there. I was like,
Wow.
yeah.
No, no.
So
That's wow.
on a tangent. Sorry.
No, 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 no. I get it. Well, it's like when I was setting up my office, I was like, I'll be done in an hour, like 3 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
Because I kept
Yep.
doing it, and I'm like, oh, I could do this better. I could do this
Mm-hmm.
better. I want to change this up.
Yep.
I get it. I get it. But those are just phrases in the day. Oh, brought it back to the book.
Look at you.
uh, um, so he taught. This is one thing that I thought was interesting is Uncle Clyde talks about like Victor says, but you're in control of the phrases, but you release your control of the individual notes. But Uncle Clyde's like, I can control everything or not control anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have the ability to, and I feel like that brings it back to the yin and yang thing, where you kind of have a balance of the
Mm-hmm.
conscious and unconscious. So you have the balance of the control and
Yep.
not have control. But he keeps focusing on the fact that if your phrase keeps coming out wrong, you may go down a level of individual notes to see what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just interesting how they talk a lot about balance. Like it's okay to be in control, but it's okay to be out of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of how you balance that out. That's the scariest thing ever. And that's the scariest thing ever, especially in
Mm-hmm.
life. When you don't
Yep.
have control over something, it freaks you out.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you really have to say to yourself, okay, I don't have control over it. It's not me, or it's
Mm-hmm.
not something I can hold on to, or I got to just let it be and we'll see
Yep.
what comes out of it. It's hard.
Yep.
It's very hard.
Yep.
This is a very philosophical chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't.
So then
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael and Clyde try to convince Victor that they're right and the other one's wrong. And they go back
Right.
and forth and try to confuse him. And Victor goes, wait, you guys are really confusing me. And Clyde says, perfect. You don't need to believe any of us, or none of us, as Clyde would say. You need to listen to us. That is all. And then Victor realizes that the whole point is that it's not that he's got these people teaching him, telling him what to do, but just giving him information and letting him formulate his own ideas to make his own decision.
Right. Right. And he goes on at the bottom to say, I should listen to all that you or anyone else has to say, then I make up my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
I choose what I want to believe. What my truth is.
Right.
Ask the questions and let the experience talk to me. And then Clyde makes the comment about how he's not as bad as Michael said.
Mm-hmm.
And then Michael said something. I don't know if I'm going to read a little bit of the paragraph. If you believe what we say all the time, you will never come to your own realization, and your own realization is the only realization there is. If we tell you different things, you will be forced to decide for yourself, and your own decisions are the only decisions you should ever make. But when you can't decide, you will have to rely on experience. If you have no experience to draw from, you must trust your feelings. That is always best, because your feelings are the only ones that will always speak the truth. And that hit, because I'm sitting here going, oh my God, that's totally what I'm going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're still unsure, test all the theories to see which one works. Oftentimes, you will find that more than one will work, but that still leaves you with a decision to make. Your decisions are best made by you and no one else.
And then Clyde says, that's what he just said, but with less words.
Yep.
And then Uncle Clyde says, you just need to listen to all of it. Keep your mind open to all the information. That'll help you make the best decisions. One bad decision today can cause you to end up way off course later on down the line. You understand? That's another one that takes me back to, boy, I screwed up.
But see, the thing is and and then at the end of the chapter, he said, "Let's make some music." But the thing is did we?
I don't
Did we?
know. And that's the thing is I don't know.
because everything that we do in our past leads us to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we made a mistake or not, if we learned from that mistake, was it really a mistake?
Right.
And do we want to use that word mistake?
Right.
They do use the word failure in the second book,
Mm-hmm.
but they use it in a positive context because a failure is learning.
Mm-hmm.
And you're better off trying and failing than not trying at all.
Right.
And you hear that in the past and you're like, no, I don't want to take the chance. I don't want to take the chance. And then you say to yourself, like, why the heck didn't I take the chance?
Mm-hmm.
So you try to change your mindset moving forward, and it's hard to take the chance, knowing that the
Right.
possibility of failure is there because of what you dealt with. But I think for myself, in the past even couple of months, I've started trying things despite the fact of what I knew what the outcome was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I was always one that if I can control the outcome, I'll do it. And that sounds horrible, but it's not that I'm a controlling person. But if it has to do with me
Mm-hmm.
and I can control the outcome and I can make sure the outcome is going to be a good outcome, I'm going to do whatever I can for that good outcome.
Yep.
But even on that end of it, I'm going to make mistakes to get to that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I'm tired. I don't want to keep doing that.
Yep.
That's me personally. I mean, that's just my thought and my opinion on the matter. Just like they said in the book, you can hear what I have to say and listen to what I have to say. You don't have to agree with me, but it may help you make a decision on how you want to handle things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree or disagree with any of
I
that?
agree with you.
Right?
Yep.
You could have a whole podcast just on philosophy and talking, and
Yep. We could.
it's like we're doing that with the book club.
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
that was an intense chapter.
It was. Yeah.
It's an intense chapter, and then the next chapter, with Isis is
A confusing chapter.
it's confusing, but like confusing because it's more of a like it's like an oh crap moment.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, really? That's how that works?
Yep.
Uh,
All right, so let's go through our little housekeeping and all
oh
that
my
good
god.
stuff. And
Yeah. So you're listening to this on a Tuesday, and we thank you for following with us and joining us in this journey as we're not dissecting the book in the sense of dissect. We're just sharing what we're getting out of the chapters, and we hope that it intrigues you even more to potentially read the book, which we highly recommend. And we highly recommend going to Amazon, no sponsor, and picking up a copy of The Music Lesson by Victor Wooten. And we highly recommend you picking up a copy of The Spirit of Music by Victor Wooten because it is, as much as Kyle said earlier, based upon what Victor Wooten said, it is a deeper version of this book. And it takes you deeper into his mindset. And it's very surreal when you read it. So thank you for listening. Keep on listening with us as we grow with this book. That being said, every Friday night, Kyle goes live on Twitch. So for those of you who are listening with him and joining him, thank you so much. Bring your friends and family with you. Every Sunday, we go live on Twitch at 7:30 p.m. We go for about 2.5 hours. And we typically do our best to align our music to what we're doing in the podcasts. As of now, when this episode comes out, our past Sunday episode live show would have featured Tina Turner's music because when this after the she had passed away prior to this episode
today,
coming out.
actually, while we're recording.
Yeah, actually, the day we're recording, she passed away. So we like to do our best to celebrate that music. So when our past Sunday will have been mainly Tina Turner music, talking a little bit about her and stuff like that. Then Mondays, Kyle's uploading our visual version of our podcast to YouTube. The episodes are about 3 or 4 weeks out from when they drop on all the fun podcast streaming services. So if you want to see us, please check that out. There's some little additive stuff in it because we don't really edit much.
There'll be a funny introduction to this one, so make sure you check that
So
out.
there
It
it is.
won't be on the audio version. So
And then every Friday, Kyle uploads some shorts to YouTube as well. So again, I've done this before, but I do thank Kyle for all the time and effort he puts into the editing and taking care of uploading the files and stuff like that. So that all being said, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all that good stuff. All that's in our show notes. We have a Discord we'd love to discuss with you. So check out the show notes, click on our link tree, you'll see everything that's available. And I have
And
nothing.
there's a new addition to our link tree that you should talk about as well.
The form.
The form.
Oh yes. June 11th, we are looking to do a live show based upon covers of songs. And we've been using this song as an example. The Sound of Silence, which was covered by Disturbed, and how we actually think it's a very well done cover. That's what we're talking about. One of your favorite bands or bands that have covered a song from another favorite band, and you just thought it was one of those things that everybody needs to hear. In that link tree link, in that link, yes, click on the link tree link in the show notes, and you will find the form that you can fill out. And please check it out. Currently we have a few responses. We still have 5 responses.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
share this out with your friends and
Stuart,
family.
Jacques, Michael, Philip, and Darren.
And we will
I almost
building
did it with a straight face this time. But...
we will be building a list ourselves, but we would love to hear from everybody else, so we can make this a part of the conversation. So check out the forum, fill it out, join us June 11th at 7:30, and we'll be playing those songs.
Yep. Thank you everyone for listening. So we'll
thank you.
Chat with you all next week. Have a good one.
Have a good one.